Okay. I'm ready to do my 15 through 11 if you are ready.
I am ready to do mine as well.
Okay. So I'm still at 4 stars. And I have a copy of this, but it's not in a pro sleeve. It's David Live, um, from 1974. Again, Visconti has greatly improved this album. Has bonus tracks, has a remix that puts you in the middle of the audience. When I first heard the remix of David Live, I was blown away. I was like, man, this sounds great. On headphones, the audience is up in the mix. Everything's got a centered soundscape, and yeah, I love it. I have many favorite tracks from here. Um, and then, like I say, he was doing a little bit of that soul stuff just starting. I wanted to mention one name on here, and I think his first name is Michael. I just wrote Kamen, Kamen, or Common. Michael
Yeah, yeah.
Kamen. He was the musical director of this show. And, I've seen the film Cracked Actor and listened to Cracked Actor audio and David Live audio. I really like Michael Kamen's vision. At the time, uh, it's hard for people to put in context, but when David Live came out, you were talking about how different he looked. He so radically rearranged these songs that we knew. You think about, anything, Panic in Detroit, or the Diamond Dogs material was fairly close, but he had a lot of songs that he really radically rearranged them. And later in his career, he would do less of that. And I think that's one reason that I have David Live so high up on the list versus, say, liveandwell.com or the 90s or later, even a reality tour. Those albums were safer. David Live was really, really caught our attention at the time. We're like, wow, are these even the same songs? Yeah, yeah, it's great. David Live, 4 stars. And then at number 14, just giving it one slight nod, Cracked Actor, Live Los Angeles 74. Um, I got these two together because I just think of them together. They're just two really good recordings of two different legs of the same tour. What's interesting is the songs that were dropped. We talk a lot about how it was a different band and he was incorporating Young Americans material. I went ahead and I looked at the two set lists side by side to see what was dropped, and I thought I would mention it because it's interesting. Dropped from David Live were Watch That Man, Width of a Circle, and Panic in Detroit. Yeah, those are good songs. If you think about how good they were on David Live, but they were replaced with really good material. So, anyway, David Live. At number 13, I have Young Americans at 4 stars. Why not higher? I got a hot take on this. I got a hot take. I love this album, but, but, Tony Visconti took off with the tapes, was mixing the album when Bowie ran into John Lennon in, well, they were in Philadelphia and Lennon was in New
Ex
York. They're across the river, right? So anyway, he bumps into John Lennon and they do Across the Universe and Fame. I And by the way, I had this original thought, and then I was watching a video channel, a reaction channel on Bowie, and the guy said the same thing. I'm like, hey, you stole my idea. But anyway, make Fame and Across the Universe a non album single and put something like It's Gonna Be Me or John, I'm Only Dancing Again. Not criticizing this album. It's good, and I like Fame, don't get me wrong. But I would like to reimagine this album with the outtakes. I almost, yeah, okay, so Fame became his first number one song. And it crossed Bowie over to America. So he was absolutely right in terms of a career move to record Fame. But Fame is not my favorite song from Young Americans. And when we get into the songs list, I'll talk more about that. But I would have liked this album even better if it didn't have Across the Universe, which is the only song I don't like. I think it's a misstep. I think it's out of place on this album. I don't care for it. And guess what? It's not one of my favorite Beatles songs. How's that for a hot take? If I made a list of my 100 favorite Beatles songs, Across the Universe would not be on it. I know how much people love that song, but there you are. I wish it was a different album, but as it is, it's 4 stars. All right. I am now up to 4.5 stars, and I'm with you, Jim. Bowie at the Beeb. This is really entertaining. It's radio shows, right? BBC
Right.
radio shows, several
Uh-huh.
of them. Maybe,
John Peel and
maybe,
others.
what's that?
John Peel shows and other ones.
Yeah, Bob Harris, and all these different people on here. And, it starts with In the Heat of the Morning, which is really early Bowie, and then goes on up to Rock and Roll Suicide, which was Ziggy Stardust. So 68, 72. So I think if you're not a Bowie fan, you can still enjoy this album. It's completely entertaining. That's the key word for this is entertaining. No one's going to pretend that these are definitive versions of these songs. But him talking about just having a baby, like listening to Kooks from Hunky Dory, like the week that he had Duncan Jones, Zoe Bowie, whatever you want to call his son. He and Angie had a baby, and he was in the he was perform. He had written it that week, and he recorded it that week. I think I could be wrong about that, but he would he would come into the studio and do songs that he hadn't even done demos for, yet alone recorded. Uh, yeah, really interesting. But if you're a fan, this is especially good. Um, I don't know. It just flows. It's a fast listen. You listen to the banter of the DJ, and it's just so entertaining. Yeah, it's a double CD, but it feels like a single CD. It just whizzes by, extremely entertaining. All right, at number 11 now, and I do have a hard copy of this on Virgin, the iconic album cover, Aladdin Sane. This would be in a lot of people's top 10. I am now at 4.5 stars again, starting with Bowie at the Beeb. There's the little Virgin. You can tell it's the Virgin symbol there. Um, and these all come from a binder that I have. I bought one of these Case Logic binders, and I've got this, if you can see this picture of Bowie with an eye patch. So I don't know if you can see that
Yeah.
there, but it's cool. It's a keychain that I just put on the thing here, but I love it. So why is Aladdin Sane not top 10? Well, it does feel a little bit rushed. You were talking about lyrics, Jim, and the lyrics, when you look at lyrics on The Man Who Sold the World, Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, and then you go to Aladdin Sane. I don't know. To me, you can tell that it's just a slight step down. I think, you know, saving all your hair for making up dead underwear and I'm sorry, those aren't my favorite lines, but there's a couple covers on here. They happen to be good. Let's spend the night together. Well, when I say cover, I'm sorry. The Prettiest Star is a re-recording, not a cover. But The Prettiest Star had been done earlier. Um, Let's Spend the Night Together, which I love, the Rolling Stones song. I don't know. It just feels a tad bit rushed, but man, the band is great. Spiders from Mars, Mike Garson's first appearance, uh, Ken Scott's wonderful production. Man, this album sounds great. So I do love Aladdin Sane. I've got it at 4.5 stars. Just feels a little rushed, a little bit weaker lyrics. My favorite songs: Aladdin Sane, the title track, Watch That Man, Panic in Detroit, Drive In Saturday. Those are my favorites. So David Live, cracked actor, Young Americans, Bowie at the Beeb, Aladdin Sane.
Okay, these next five are my last 4.5 albums. Then we get to my top 10, which are all 5 stars.
Okay.
Um, Surprisingly that this rates so high, but VH1 Storytellers, what I liked about it when it came out, it was like, yeah, Bowie's doing all these great songs, both old and new, and he just sounds so warm and real. And that could have been as much a mask as
Mhm.
anything else he was doing, but he's pretending. And it just was, I really like listening to that album. I know that All Music only gave it a 3.5, but I give it a 4.5. And
Mm.
it has a lot of just let me see here. Bowie, trying to remember the songs that I like the best. Here, VH1 Storytellers. Uh, okay, so it begins with my favorite Bowie song, Life on Mars. And his voice is in fantastic shape
Yes.
on this. And it goes back and it does Rebel Rebel, and then Thursday's Child, a newer one. And then he does Can't Help Thinking About Me,
Mhm.
then China Girl, um, and Seven, Drive In Saturday. We'll get to that later. Word on a Wing, um, and Survive. I Can't Read. Always Crashing in the Same Car, and If I'm Dreaming. So you know,
Mm.
just a great selection of songs. And if that those are the only ones that he did there, it still would have been a worthwhile show to see. Um, okay, now these are next four are right on the cusp of being 5.0. Heroes, all right. Heroes is you know, an amazing album with an amazing side one. Side two, I'm glad that I'm behind the camera so nobody can throw things at me. But both with Heroes and Low, um, instrumentals are not Bowie's forte. Okay, they're not his high point. They're not they're his biggest strength. David Bowie is not Brian Eno, and yet he was really trying to be on Low and Heroes. The fact is, on Lodger, maybe one of the, Lodger, he wasn't doing that. But Heroes, you get these fantastic, indispensable Bowie songs, including the title track, Heroes. Um, but then you get a bunch of instrumentals, which are pleasant, but you kind of wait, where are the rest of the songs? And so the reason that this is docked half a point is because where are the rest of the songs? Low, same thing. First side, bunch of Bowie songs. Hey, yeah, Bowie's doing songs again. And then, okay, then you get these like Warzawa. That's, I mean, that has grown on me so much. But he just, this is when, more than anything else, second side of Low is when Bowie was trying to be Eno. Okay, he was really influenced by Eno, and he was trying to make his version of Another Green World. Um, it still rates really high because Bowie stealing from Eno, and Eno didn't care. See, unlike Brian Ferry and Mick Jagger, Eno didn't care if Bowie stole from him. So Bowie, supposedly, Eno even did a large portion of Warzawa. If you look on YouTube, there's a really funny animated thing of Tony Visconti and David Bowie and Brian Eno in the studio. And Bowie went out to do something, and Brian Eno's sitting around doodling with the keyboard. and makes Warzawa. And then Bowie comes back in and tries to come up with some lyrics for it, and none of them work. So he just starts like, Sulami, son. And Eno says, yeah, that's good. And Tony Visconti is just, oh, I, I was there too. It kind of makes fun of Tony Visconti. Um, then David Live. Why is David Live so high? Because it's a great album, and because I saw this. The Ryko disc version put the Panic in Detroit back in there, and it put a song that should not have ever been cut, and that is Space Oddity. David came out on a giant cherry picker and
Mm.
sang Space Oddity because that's supposed to be his, space capsule. Um, and then Cracked Actor, he's doing his uh, Ziggy Hamlet, and he's holding a skull and singing to it and French kissing it. Just so many good things. I do have to tell you one thing that I still laugh after all these many, many years, after more than 50 years, and that is uh, the when he sang "Time Takes a Cigarette, Puts It in
Uh-huh.
Your Mouth, Rock and Roll Suicide," and he lit up a cigarette, and at the end Veterans Memorial Coliseum. This was 74. They had just started saying no smoking. And somebody yells really loud, "No smoking!" And Bowie didn't react at all, but he had to hear it. Um, so yeah, but I mean I love listening to this because even if it is a little different than the Cracked Actor, I've had it for 50 years and I've listened to it for 50 years. And you know how sometimes one thing can take the place of another? Now, if I think about the show, I'm hearing the David Live version of it.
Right.
But I will tell you somebody that was there, and that was uh, he was Luther Vandross. Um, Luther Vandross was at the end there when they did an early version of Somebody Up There Likes Me. So that was cool. Um, and then we have Reality, which only misses a reality tour as a 5.0 because there's only 10 albums left and I couldn't cut any of them. But Reality, when it first came out, I didn't like it as much as Heathen, but I like it almost as much now. It's a 4.5 verging on a 5.0. Has some great songs on it. You mentioned, Gene, Bring Me the Disco King, which is one of the best Mike Garson piano things ever. And it has and you one place we differ is you don't care much for Pablo Picasso, but the fact is, by the way, I just recently got the new Bowie Record Store Day, um, you know, uh, live thing that has a live version of Pablo Picasso and some of the others.
Mm.
But um, Jonathan Richman has this adenoidal, some people try to hook up girls and they get called assholes. And Bowie, he just rocks it out and he adds a completely different song underneath it, which is what I like. When sometimes I mentioned how much I love Bowie's Waterloo Sunset, and it's so much like the Kinks, but to hear a very different version of Pablo Picasso and a very different version of the Pixies Cactus, and Bowie was a huge Pixies fan. So Reality was a great album. It took a little while to grow on me, but it also has another outtake that to me is an indispensable Bowie song, and that is Bowie's version. And I talked about this when we talked about Dylan covers, um, and that is Bowie's version of
Trying to get to heaven.
Trying to Get to Heaven Before They Close the Door. Yeah, and if anything, I like that better than Dylan's version. So that was from the Japanese version of Reality. And I don't know if it's ever been available any other main way, but yeah, that's how I got it. Okay, so we've got um, VH1 Storytellers. These are my 4.5s. Heroes, Low, David Live, and Reality.
Okay, and I'm a little surprised, mildly surprised by that list. It's interesting, like VH1 storytellers being so high, and it's interesting. One thing about Pablo Picasso, though, last time I was listening to that song, I was thinking to myself, he could be singing, David Bowie could be singing about himself. Like he's singing about Pablo Picasso, but there were aspects of their lives, certainly in terms of um, not keeping it in your pants too, and different things that, yeah, people could not resist his stare. Well, Bowie had an interesting stare too, with two different eyes, and it's just like I've listened to that song and oops, I just bumped it. I've listened to that song and thought, it's almost autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
I
reading
really,
today I was reading about Aleister Crowley and
Crowley, Crowley,
Crowley.
Crowley,
Okay, so
Aleister
Wikipedia
Crowley.
said Crow. Wikipedia said Crowley.
Did they?
So I've always said Crowley.
Yeah.
So Lister Crowley,
Aleister Crowley.
Aleister
Aleister.
Crowley. Well, that's how I've always said it. But Wikipedia messed me up today. It was like Lister Crowley. That's how it did the phonetics. I was like, whatever. But anyway, he was a real what was the word they used? Not hedonist, but pleasure is everything.
Satanist?
Not liberal, libertine,
Yes.
libertine. They called him a libertine. I thought, well, Bowie was quite the libertine too. He had an open marriage and all this stuff, and was yeah, yeah. So interesting. So I think Pablo Picasso is a little bit a little bit close to the bone, but I do like it. I do like it. Um, you want to take a break?
Yeah, yeah, we could go ahead and do that. Yeah, let's go ahead. The last thing I would point out, though, is that I just love the musical arrangement that Bowie did for Pablo Picasso. Um, that driving rock and roll thing that he puts on.
Okay, welcome back. So Jem and I are going to talk about 10 through 1, and I'm Gene, retired in Mexico, and this is Professor Gumbo. So you've already watched our 15 through 11, and we're just going to keep rocking and rolling. But I wanted to explain why we have new clothing on, and our backgrounds might be a little different. So I'm going to go ahead and start here, and thanks for coming on board with this. We're going to do 15 through 11, but it's two recording sessions. So just thought I'd be transparent with everybody about that. And so I'm at number 10 right now. And number 10 for me, this is kind of interesting. Just real quick, I was looking at my top 23 today because my top 23 are all my 4 stars and higher. And I have 11 albums at 4 stars, only 3 at 4.5, and then 9 at 5 stars, which is kind of odd that I only have 3 4.5 star albums. And this is the last one in that pack. And I was thinking I could have reordered these. So at number 12, I had Bowie at the Beeb, and number 11 was Aladdin Sane. Number 10 is 1970's The Man Who Sold the World. I was asking myself today, do I really like this album better than Aladdin Sane? And I don't know. I could switch them out. So what I will say is that Aladdin Sane has higher highs, but The Man Who Sold the World hangs together pretty well as an entire album. It's such a radical departure from Space Oddity, Man of Words, whatever you want to call the 69 sort of, not the debut, but what a lot of people consider the debut. And this one turns around and does this Sabbathy hard rock with a bass turned way up. It's interesting. The engineer on this album is Ken Scott, who would go on to produce the next album, Hunky Dory. And this was also recorded in Trident Studios. So you've got the same studio and this one of the same people, but Visconti produced it, and it sounds so much different than Hunky Dory. It's like day and night. So the songs I like on here are Width of a Circle. That's about 8, 9 minutes long. I love that. Black Country Rock, the sort of T-Rex homage, and the title track, "The Man Who Sold the World," which of course is famously risen now as a top 10 streamed song by Bowie because of Nirvana. And I also like the Superman, and I like After All. The only reason it's not at 5 stars, there are some songs like maybe She Shook Me Cold or Running Gun Blues that I like, but I don't consider to be 5.0 tracks. But yeah, I love it. So this is two-thirds The Spiders. It's Trevor Bol or not Trevor Boulder, but Woody Woodmansey and Mick Ronson from the Future Spiders. But Visconti's stepping in on the bass, and man, he has the bass turned up high. And then Ralph Mace plays some Moog, and that's it. It's a pretty stripped down affair. Sounds like a group effort, sounds like a band, and thematically, it really hangs together. I like it. So 4.5 stars, and that's the last of my 4.5 star albums. I do not have a hard copy of that. Number 9, an album that I've gone back and forth on. I have Diamond Dogs at number 9. So, in re listening to this for this project, I thought, this really holds together well as a concept album. Because he wanted to do 1984 musical, but what's her name? Olivia Orwell? No, can't remember her first name, but Mrs. Orwell. We'll call her Mrs. Orwell. Squashed the rights to using any of George Orwell's material, so he had to revamp it. And yeah, it's on paper it was a bit of a mess, but when you listen to it, I think it really holds together well as a concept album. I really like this. Bowie plays guitar on it, and it has that sort of ragged feel. He's not a guitar virtuoso, but I like it, and it kind of presages, is that the word, or predicts kind of indie rock where a lot of people, it isn't so much about their musicianship, but the feel of the music. And I think this is uh, kind of an indicator of things to come. Uh, yeah, and the album artwork, of course, got a lot of people's attention. But I like the title track, Diamond Dogs, Sweet Thing, Candidate, Sweet Thing Reprise, Rebel Rebel, 1984, Big Brother, a lot of really good stuff on here. He had Herbie Flowers play bass on here and Andy Newmark drums. And Herbie, which then he would have on the first leg of the uh, Diamond Dogs tour before he would replace them. But Herbie Flowers, who played the bass on Walk on the Wild Side, that upright acoustic bass, has killer bass on here. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot. I think Bowie had a real affinity for good bass players, good drummers, and good bass players. So I'll always be talking about rhythm sections when I talk about Bowie. But yeah, strong songs, like the guitar, like the ragged feel of it. So at number 8, at 5 stars, and boy, very few people have this album at 5 stars. Very few people have this in their top 10, but I am a big fan of Lodger. Okay, so people say it's disjointed. They say it's the least of the so-called Berlin trilogy, and that's true. And people often say it sounds a little bit like David Byrne, but I think that's just because Adrian Belew is on here, and so that makes an association in your mind. Um, I mean, sometimes association. So, for example, I believe, Billy Joel and Elton John toured together for years. People think of them together. You know why they think of them together? Because John and Joel are next to each other in the record rack alphabetically. Sometimes there are associations, I think, that are just coincidental. And with Belew's guitar on here, I think it reminds people of the Talking Heads. But to my ear, this is unique Bowie. And I don't mind the kind of oblique strategies thing. It's very fractured, but I love it. And there's some great funk on here that you've got you've got kind of the funk of his 77 period, but you've got the art pop that he would go into later. And I think this album, to me, to my ears, although it gets lumped in with the Berlin trilogy with Low and Heroes, to me, this is much more a sister to Scary Monsters. It kind of predicts what that album would do. That kind of art pop with some kind of unhinged vocals. Fantastic Voyage, wonderful song. Look Back in Anger, Boys Keep Swinging, DJ, Repetition. I think these are really, really strong songs. I love the band on here. I love the Alomar Davis Murray rhythm section with Baloo on guitar. Um, yeah, it's great. I don't remember who else is on here, but that main core. And I'm a big fan of Lodger. I think very few people would have it at 5 stars, but I love the album. Number seven, an album I do not have a hard copy of, but it's Bowie's last album, Black Star. This is 5 stars all the way from 2016. The band is so good. Donnie McCaslin, great band, and just listen to the drummer alone. He does the most creative jazz drumming on here. When you think of the title track, the drums are really unusual. The lyrics, of course. So Bowie is a lyricist. I think even a fan would admit that Bowie can be uneven. A lot of times he would do the lyrics in the studio or even after the musicians recorded. But as he went through his career, I think he got a little more deliberate about lyrics. And on here, the lyrics on songs like I Can't Give Everything Away and Lazarus and Black Star, these are powerful, powerful lyrics. And I do think Bowie upped his game. The emotion on here, the combination of Bowie singing, the lyrics, and the band make for an album that some people consider overrated. I do not. I think Black Star is absolutely a 5 star album, and I love it. It's high enough to be number seven on my list. And then the last one in my set of five is Scary Monsters from 1980. Boy, I love this album. What are my notes? Fripp, 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 and more Fripp. You know, you think about Fripp's best guitar, you think about songs like maybe St. Elmo's Fire on Another Green World or Starless on the album Red by King Crimson. But you listen to the guitar on Teenage Wildlife, for example. Um, some of his best guitar playing, I think, is on this album. And yeah, and you still have the core rhythm section that I like so much. So many good songs on here. It's No Game. I love part one and the closing, Ashes to Ashes, Fashion, Teenage Wildlife. And I love the cover version of Tom Verlaine's Kingdom Come. The only hot take I have on this album, and again, it's 5 stars, so I think it's perfect. I think for me, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, the title track, which I like, that's not one of my favorite songs on the album, and I think that's many people's favorite. I like that song, but it's just not one of my top 3 or 4 songs on the album. But there are some real unhinged vocals, that really great art pop on here. I love it. Scary Monsters. So just to recap, The Man Who Sold the World, Diamond Dogs, Lodger, Black Star, and Scary Monsters. What's interesting about that list, it's all 70s except Black Star, which jumps to 2010s. Yeah. Your turn, Jim.
Okay. Well, uh, for my 10 through 6, I've got kind of a variety here, but they're all albums. They're all five star albums. Everything from here on out is 5 stars. And I start with Aladdin Sane, an album that when it first came out and I was in high school, I did not care for the entire album as much as I do now. But I have come to value it as one of Bowie's best efforts. Um, it's like uh, it's almost a perfect cross between Ziggy Stardust and Diamond Dogs as far as the Bowie-ishness about it. This was the tail end of Ziggy Stardust. Actually, Diamond Dogs in a way was, but this was the tour the final tour that he did had a lot of songs from this, and I think with one or two minor exceptions that are less than exceptional, this is an amazing album. It begins with Watch That Man, and which is a great rocker. And then you have Aladdin Sane, which is the introduction to the world of the off-kilter piano playing of Mike Garson. And when I was in high school and I first heard that, I thought, what the hell is that? I've read since then that Mike Garson, who had just joined the Spiders and was on the album, he said that um, Bowie said, play really, jazzy. And so Garson played, and then Bowie said, no, more. And so Garson played more. Bowie said, no, more. Make it really, really disjointed. And so, all right, and so he did. And that's become famous piano part by that. But it's just a great song. One of Bowie's perfect hits, one of his perfect songs is Drive-In Saturday. The lyrics are great. The music, uh, his name was always Buddy, and he'd shrug and ask to stay, and she'd sigh like Twig the Wonder Kid. And it's just, it's uncertain if he likes her, but he knows he really loves her. Okay. Crash Course for the Ravers. It's a drive-in Saturday. The one thing, if you watch the video of it, you'll see he changes the lyric when he says, "When people stared in Jagger's eyes and scored," on the live version, not live, but the studio video recording. He says, "When Jagger stared in people's eyes and scored." And Bowie and Jagger were very close at that time. So the album does it stay the same quality all the way through? Almost. It's got Gene Genie and what else here? Gene Genie and
Cracked actor?
Panic in Detroit, Panic in Detroit,
Mannequin.
and then and Cracked Actor. But it ends, it ends a little bit weird with doing the Stones' "Let's Spend the Night Together," which took me a while to warm up to, but I've since warmed up to it. So everything about this album, I just love this album. Okay. Um, Next would be Hunky Dory, a lot of people's favorite Bowie album. And it does have my favorite Bowie song on it. If I had to choose the perfect Bowie song, and we'll get to that when we get to songs, but it's a song that has a number of really famous bits on it, including Changes. Everybody knows the song Changes. Uh, that Watch uh, Life on Mars. Has a couple tributes. One of them is "Song for Bob Dylan," and it's got Queen Bitch, and it's fantastic album from beginning to end. It has a different sound to it, and part of the reason for this that is the keyboard player, the piano player, Rick Wakeman. Um, this was Rick Wakeman had just was on the verge of, was he going to become Bowie's piano player or was he going to join Yes? And he joined Yes. But Wakeman has said when he went into the studio and Bowie played him these songs, he said, I've never heard a group of songs, a group that would make an album that were so consistently incredible. Every single song on there, Wakeman considered to be brilliant. And so Hunky Dory, it's got a different feel for it. It's interesting that it's the album just before Ziggy Stardust because it doesn't quite have that glam sound as much. It's still Bowie doing a little bit of the folky type thing, but it's the best of those albums. So there's Hunky Dory at number nine. Um, then we jump way forward from 1971 to 2002 with an album that for me was a major comeback for Bowie, and that was Heathen. I love the album Heathen. It was an album that every song, I mean, one, two, three, four, they just it was after 9/11. And this was Bowie's response to 9/11 when the album came out. And if you think about that, you can tell there's it has a melancholy about it, but it also it has an anger in it. Um, you've got Sunday, which is a great opening track, which later was produced by Moby as a single. Um, then you've got the Pixies' Cactus, which Bowie was a huge Pixies fan, and he does a great job with Cactus. Then Slip Away, Slow Burn. I love Slow Burn. And then you've got, it, you know, let's see. Uh, I've Been Waiting for You. And then we have a few songs that are not maybe quite as top notch, but they're still 5 stars. Uh, 5:15, The Angels Have Gone, and everyone says hi. But uh, the song that really stuck out to me the first time I heard it was A Better Future. And it's Bowie um, making a deal with God, as Kate Bush would say. He's saying to God, I demand a better future, or I will stop loving you. Okay. Um, and it's like he's telling it's Bowie has the audacity to tell God, I demand a better future. He was married, he was happy, and then 9/11 happened, and he was living in New York at the time, and it just really he felt very threatened by it. But it also has a great band, including uh, the who else is I'm trying to think of keyboards. The keyboard player for Dream Theater. Uh,
Yeah, I forget his name. Let me look it
yeah,
up while you're talking.
yeah, but he plays on it. There's a proggy sound to it, okay, and it's a very well produced album, and it holds together. There's a real cohesion to the album, and so that is part of why I love the album so much. Um, and then
I'm
there were a
pulling up
lot of
it's the keyboard player is, well, it must be a guest artist, huh?
yeah, it'll come back to me, but this, a lot of excellent backup tracks. There's an extra disc that goes with it, including a remake of Shadow Man.
Jordan
Uh,
Rudess. Jordan
yes,
Rudess.
Jordan Rudess. Jordan Rudess was played some of the keyboards on it. And if I recall, didn't Wakeman, I think, play on it again? But it's just overall really a fine album. And great cover, great listen from beginning to end. One of my favorite late Bowie albums. Then we have Young Americans, an album that, much to my shame, in 1975, I was not that big on soul music. Okay. I was really getting into progressive rock at the time. And I was also into the whole glam scene, but I was listening to bands like Genesis and Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then Roxy Music and David Bowie. And I had just seen the David live. Well, um, yeah, there was some soul stuff on David live, but I was really blown over by Young Americans. And of course, the title track is amazing, but this album has only gotten better for me. Uh, Somebody Up There Likes Me. Nobody ever talks about that, but that's to me one of my favorite songs from that album. Uh, of course, Fame, which was it's sort of an afterthought, but it still sounds good. The If there's one song on it that I struggle with, it is his version of uh, let me
Across
take a look.
across the
Well,
universe.
Across the Universe, yeah, Across the Universe, and the only reason why is because I feel that the vocals are somewhat overwrought on it. But it's still, Young Americans is Bowie's what he called plastic soul, and nobody did it better than Bowie. And it set the pace for stuff he was going to do in the future. As a matter of fact, Young Americans would develop once you put a Teutonic spin on it into Station to Station. And then finally, number six is a live album. Actually, and that is, I love this album because I saw the show, not this very show, but this tour. It's a reality tour. Um, Great collection of songs, great performances, and you might remember that earlier I put reality as my number 11. Well, that's only because all the best songs from reality are on this, and they're actually done better. Okay, so if I had to choose between Reality Tour and the album Reality, but Reality Tour is, believe it or not, my favorite David Bowie live album. It's the one, and it's the album that if somebody asks me about David Bowie and they want to get a sample of what Bowie was like, it's like, even though it's live, it's sort of the best, greatest hits I can provide them with. Okay, so we've got 10 through 6, Aladdin Sane, Hunky Dory, Heathen, Young Americans, and a reality tour. All
Wow,
five-star albums.
that's a great list. And I'm going to make a comment only because viewers might write in about this, but there's some information on Wikipedia that Bowie has distanced himself a little bit. It's hard to say because who knows when Bowie's telling the truth. But he tried to argue in interviews that he wrote a lot of the Heathen songs before 9/11. And Bruce Springsteen said the same thing about The Rising. But people hear what they hear. So you have, sometimes the public takes over the meaning of a song, right?
Mhm.
It ends up becoming what the public says it's about. So to say it's his 911 album is completely fair, but he's distanced himself from that statement. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't know what the truth is, but someone might write on the channel, hey, blah, 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 blah. So I just thought I would interject there, but it certainly feels postmodern, doesn't it?
And it was released after 9/11,
Yeah.
and recorded after 9/11. So he may have written the songs before then, but I think that what happened in 9/11 definitely affected his performance of them and his choice of the songs that are on there.
Yeah, the choice of the songs, the sequencing on the album, maybe a couple lyrics were tinkered with afterwards. And yeah, so there's different opinions floating around on that. All right. I love that list. It's really, I just love it. It makes perfect sense, but I don't think it would be most people's 10 through 6. But it's a great list. I love it. For the top 5, I'm going to suggest we go back and forth.
Okay.
to add a little bit of drama. So I'm going to talk about my number five and then let you talk about your number five. So for me, this is where I have Hunky Dory. So this is one of my top five albums. I like Changes, Life on Mars, love the Bewlay Brothers. That's a fantastic track. Recorded at Trident Studios with that great Trident piano. So I don't know if you know this, Jim, but the piano that sits in Trident Studios is the same piano used on the song Let It Be by the Beatles, Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, the entire album Madman Across the Water. It's a famous piano. Rick Wakeman said it's really hard to play,
Hmm.
but I absolutely love the piano sounds on here, and it's a highly sought after piano. So I thought I would just mention that. And then something that the album doesn't get a lot of credit for that I really noticed on this particular deep dive that we did. But the last time I listened to this album, I said, you know, Mick Ronson's string arrangements on here are incredible. And I'll talk about that more on the songs list. But my God, Mick Ronson's a great string arranger. I think he's better than, Visconti has done a lot of string arrangements for Bowie, but the strings on here are just fantastic. I like every song. Weakest song on here, maybe Song for Bob Dylan, but not Andy Warhol. I'm sorry, Warhol. Hole.
War
It's
hole,
Wall. It's
as in
Hole.
holes.
Like hole. So I just corrected myself. But Queen Bitch and Quicksand. And Quicksand, though, is a little disturbing, all that Nietzschean lyrics. But still, this is a great album. Hunky Dory, first album by Ken Scott. And we talked about earlier in this video about how Visconti would get better um, as a producer later. I think the jump in production from Man Who Sold the World to Hunky Dory is a huge step up. And Visconti, to his credit, has talked in interviews about how much he loves Ken Scott's production. So they're very friendly with each other. And why not? One was a producer, one was an engineer. I don't think there's a bad track on here. Yeah, like I said, maybe "Song for Bob Dylan" is the weakest, but still great. And of course, it echoes "Song for Woody," which was on Bob Dylan's debut album, where he imitated Woody Guthrie and Bowie's imitating Dylan. So it works. It's effective. I like Hunky Dory. Plenty written about it, so I'm not going to say any more. Plus, you've already commented on it. Okay, your turn for number five, Jim.
Black Star. Um,
Mm.
each one of the albums that are I'm going to be talking about now have a strong emotional connection with me. And you can imagine when you have loved an artist for as long as Cindy and I loved Bowie, and we're talking about all the way back from 72, 73 up through 2016. And unlike a lot of people who say, all right, yeah, I like this from Bowie, I like that from Bowie, we loved everything by Bowie, even the lesser stuff from the uh 80s. But Black Star, I mean, imagine that, knowing that Bowie was recording again and he releases an album and it comes out practically simultaneous with his death. And I was devastated by this. And of course, Bowie's not here to say, well, I really wasn't considering Black Star to be my death album. But it is. He knew he was dying. We know that because several people that were close friends, he shared with them that he was dying. Um, in, and so it's got this, it's got everything that the next day has, but better. And his vocals at times are almost Scott Walkerish. You've got this avant-garde jazz thing going on, but and they put out a few videos that were amazing with it also. My my two favorite songs on here are Black Star, which is such a strange song because it starts off with a strange, moody thing, and then it breaks into a very melodic Bowie line about 3 or 4 minutes in. Something happened on the day he died. And it's basically the song Black Star is a it's a homage or it's the wake, if you will, for Major Tom. You know, he wrote about Major Tom a number of times. This is Major Tom. You don't believe me? Watch the video, okay?
Yeah.
So it's like Major Tom is dead, um, and but he says, you know, I'm I'm a black star. I'm not a star. I'm a black star. And the lyrics are great. The music is great. His vocal, fantastic. Um, then also on Black Star, we've got another song almost as good, and that is the Lazarus. And Lazarus is Bowie again looking at his death, his forthcoming death, and Girl Loves Me, which is a really strange song, but I really like that one. But the song that hits me emotionally is I Can't Give Everything Away. It's the final song, the last song Bowie recorded, um, at least for that album, and that's his final album. Uh, I can't give everything away. It has a double meaning. You know, he wants to give things to, you know, people, but he can't give it all away. But it also means I can't let you know. I can't tip my cards, you know. I can't tell you exactly what I've got going. I can't give it all away. And he didn't give it all away. He recorded that and then he died. Something happened on the day he died. Um, and so Black Star, I love the album. It's a powerful album. It still hits me like a total punch to the gut every time I listen to it, but that doesn't keep me from listening to it. I love it. And then another album that,
Oh,
oh,
wait,
that's
we're
it.
going back.
Yeah, we are. So
Yeah.
that is my number five.
Yeah. And I set you up on that. Sorry. I
That's all right.
didn't discuss it when we were doing. Um,
No,
yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah, we both have that in our top 10. And yeah, what a powerful, powerful album. I did read something this week. I'll just say quickly that he had asked Maria Schneider to work on those songs. She had done Sue a Season of Crime, the first version, which later was released on the compilation Nothing Has Changed and then was re recorded. And she was busy. And she said, well, why don't you work with Donnie McCaslin again? Uh, he's like, yeah, really? Okay. So that was her suggestion that he work with Donnie McCaslin's band. And I thought to myself, in watching an interview with her or a little mini documentary, what if she had not been busy? It would have been a totally different album, I think. And sometimes things are fortuitous.
we should clarify
Number
that this Maria Schneider is not the girl that was with Marlon Brando in Last Tango in Paris.
Correct. She's a keyboard player.
Right.
Yep. Um, number four for me is Heroes. So I love this album. I absolutely love this album. And to me, it's so different than Low. Not the second side. The second side is similar in a lot of ways, but for two albums recorded in the same year, and then of course he recorded The Idiot and Lust for Life for Iggy. So four albums that Bowie wrote or co-wrote songs on in one year. I absolutely love all four of those albums. The Idiot and Lust for Life are my favorite Iggy Pop albums. Um, yeah, this is side A is really different on here from Low in that it's less, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more erratic. The songs tend to shift gears right in the middle. There's a lot of microphone placement that's different on here. It's, I think, a little less synth driven. It's a little less melodic, but it's got these unhinged, I use that word again, these unhinged vocals from Bowie. I mean, I don't know that there's anything on Low like, I'm under Japanese influence and all this kind of thing, right? He's just going nuts on here. And of course, it has the title track, Heroes, which is one of Robert Fripp's all time best guitar solos. And apparently, he did it in one take, which is phenomenal. I don't know how a human being does that. It's one of life's mysteries to me. And mysteries are great, aren't they? I think it would be bad if we knew everything. There's a Ray Bradbury story where a computer figures out the meaning of life, and then one of the guys looks up in the sky and notices the stars going out one by one. In other words, once you know it all, there's no point. It's a brilliant short story. I just love everything on here. The ambient side is moodier and darker, if you can believe that. I think Low is brighter. There's some really almost sad. Well, not almost. There are. There's a couple instrumentals on here that sound sad. People call Low a depressing album, but side two of this to me is more depressing. But guess what? I like depressing music. Makes me happy.
That's what the blues are supposed to do.
Yeah, it is, It's like woke up this morning and what was it? Rufus Thomas. Remember Rufus Thomas? He
Yeah.
said the blues are when your wife has left and she's even taken the salt and pepper out of the salt and pepper shakers. That was hilarious. She left you nothing. Uh, my favorite songs on here. I don't know. I think when you get into the top five, there's no point in even saying what your favorite songs are. This is an album that every single song is a winner. It's a perfect album. You might say, well, didn't you say the other stars were the other albums were 5 stars? Yeah, but they might have been 4.8 or 4.9, right? And I rounded up to five. This is 5.0 all the way. And we saw this tour,
Mhm.
which is interesting too. That was a real treat. But I love this album, Heroes. Enough's been written about it. Tons and tons and tons and tons of magazine articles about Heroes. And by the way, the only one recorded in Berlin. Your turn.
Okay. All right. My number four. Another one that has a lot of meaning to me. It was my freshman year in college, and Bowie released Station to Station. And God, the beginning of it, it's like it's industrial. It is influenced by krautrock. Very much. He was listening to Kraftwerk, but you've you've got this slow opening, and it's like a train getting started. And again, this is Bowie coked out of his mind at this point, telling Earl Slick, play it wild. And more wild, more wild. Bowie often wanted more, and so that incredible screeching guitar that you got is by Earl Slick, and then you've got the return of the Thin White Duke throwing darts in lovers' eyes, and it's almost sinister because there's almost this fascist thing about it, the Thin White Duke, and that's when Bowie was very much, kind of his fascination with the Nazis, which never completely went overboard, but it was there. Um, but then he makes an excuse for himself. It's not the side effects of the cocaine. I'm thinking that it must be love. But it was the side effects of the cocaine. He was coked out of his skull. He can't, he's admitted, or he admitted later, he could not even remember most of the sessions for Station to Station. He doesn't remember recording them. And when you hear some of the songs on there, like the song Station to Station and his science fiction TVC 15, and his funky golden years. He still was doing that Plastic Soul, but now it was, Germanized. Um, you've got all of this, you know, really weird attitude from it, and yet the and word on a wing, which is a prayer. And he said that was an honest prayer. He realized that he was getting so totally effed up that he just could not go on, and he made this prayer that Lord, I offer you my word on a wing, and I'm trying hard to fit among the scheme of things. Um, but the song that stands out to me the most, aside from Station to Station, is the cover, and that is "Wild as the Wind," a song that was originally done for a movie. And I believe was it Johnny Mathis who did the
Yes.
original? Yes, but it's not the Johnny Mathis version that had inspired Bowie. It was another version. It was his cover
Nina
by
Simone.
Nina Simone's version of it. And if you hear her version of it, you really can hear how he's doing it. But his vocal, it's like if anybody ever doubted that Bowie was an amazing singer, just listen to Wild as the Wind. Um, it's it's a positive crooner, and he sings so well on this. It's hard to believe that somebody that was coked to the gills was able to sing a song like this. Don't you know your life? It's hell. Um, and it's hell or itself. It's a double meaning there. Um, Great song. Every song on here, Stay, with it would have a da 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 da. It to me it was like, okay, right, this is my Bowie. This it took me a while to warm up to Young Americans. It did not take me a while to warm up to Station to Station. When this came out, I go, yes, this is my Bowie. And so that's my number four.
Great. And I haven't talked about that album yet. My number three is Ziggy Stardust. To be accurate, the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And objectively, anyone who puts this at number one, I get it. It's, objectively and sonically, it's in many ways Bowie's best. Uh, and this is Ken Scott. I've mentioned Ken Scott a few times, but this is his genius on here. Um, because one of the things I love about this album sonically is the balance of acoustic and electric guitars. There is acoustic guitar in one channel on almost every song, and it's perfectly balanced and separated from the electric guitar, and that is presumably Bowie and Ronson playing together. I love the interplay of acoustic and electric. You don't get to actually hear it. I'm not saying people don't do it. You don't get to hear it. A lot of times the acoustic will be kind of in the background, low in the mix, or, it's there, and I guess you're hearing it, but not consciously. And here they're equal, they're even Steven, and they're in separate channels. And I absolutely love the way Ken Scott put this thing together, because the acoustic guitar by David Bowie is fantastic on here. I love it. But then you get all these great electric leads, and then the drumming by Woody is great, and the bass by Trevor is great, and everything on here. And I guess there's one other musician on here. I forget who it is. There was one auxiliary or supporting musician, but it's basically the Spiders. The sequencing is perfect. I think if I had to pick the weakest song, maybe It Ain't Easy. That's fantastic. That's a great song. That was earlier. That was, I think, from his Arnold Corns period, and it feels ever so slightly out of place on the album, but everything on here is great. So there might be a little familiarity bias here where I've got it at number three because I've played it to death. I've played it more than any album by Bowie, but how can you argue against it? I feel almost bad putting it at number three. Um, every song, every song's a favorite. Like I say, maybe It Ain't Easy is the weakest, but yeah, this is just one punch after another punch after another punch, and it's so much fun. As they used to say back then, or as Mark Bolan would say, it was a gas. It's a gas. Remember that phrase? So
Mm-hmm.
much has been written about it. I'm not going to say any more, and I know you haven't talked about it yet. Great album cover, by the way. One of my favorite Bowie album covers. Uh, yeah, Ziggy Stardust, perfect album. Your turn.
Okay, now it's odd that I should, have so much importance to the album that I give number three to, but Diamond Dogs was my first Bowie album. Okay. And and Gene, I'm not going to presume to tell you what the first Bowie album you heard was, but I can tell you this for sure. It was the first album that I played for you by Bowie. It was the
Okay.
summer, this it was during that summer. And I had you over and I played it for you. I was so blown away by the variety of Bowie's vocals. And as I told you, I was, really um, getting into early Roxy music at the time too. And there's a lot of Roxy influence on here, but there's also Rolling Stones influence. Um, I was lying in bed listening to the radio before I got to this album, before it even came out, and they played Rebel Rebel. And I go, oh my God, that sounds like the Rolling Stones. Um, and so, but then I get the album and I bring it home and oh, and in the depth, uh, you know, and it's like, what the hell? And you got the song Diamond Dogs is just a great intro. And from beginning to end. Now, I know that Bowie did not get permission to use the 1984 stuff, but he was able to use the date because it's not copyrighted, 1984. Um, and it's one song after another. This is actually, even though this is very, very glam, it's also it points to young Americans because, there's this David Bowie early on in 1974 was doing funk stuff with, the song 1984 is definitely a funk type song. But besides Diamond Dogs and we've got a three part, but I consider it one song, and that is Sweet Thing. Okay. And Bowie also considers this to be he considered it to be one of his favorites. There was an album that he put together, a single disc of his older songs, and this was on it. And you can't separate Sweet Thing, Candidate, Sweet Thing from, you have to have it as the entire thing. And in some cases, it has been made as a single track, and that's how I see it. But um, it starts it starts very much like Roxy Music's Mother of Pearl, even with the whoo, whoo, and you know what Bowie's doing here. And then his saxophone playing reminds me of Andy Mackay.
Yeah.
And so there is this, especially on that song. So I mean, I just listened to that and I think, man, if I did not know Roxy Music already, I would think that Brian Ferry had ripped off uh, David Bowie, but he didn't. the Stranded was recorded first. But you know, Bowie was always the sum of his influences, and he was both influenced by Ferry, he was a rival to Ferry, and he was friends with Ferry. But but he also stole from Ferry, as we talked about, before with pinups. Um, and it's like Bowie was a mod, and if he liked something, he would take that sound and incorporate it. And this is a great example of him doing that. So uh, it was the my first David Bowie album, and it will always have a really special place in my heart. But not just because of that, because it's such a great, great album. And I agree with everything you said about it, Gene, with the kind of jagged, rough edges to it, which makes it even more fitting to be an adaptation of Orwell.
Yeah, and I didn't mention this, but Bowie produced it, and then when he was mixing it, he had trouble mixing it, so that's when he called in Visconti for help mixing it. But it's produced by Bowie, and it might be the only album completely produced by him without a co-producer. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, and so it's unique in his catalog for that reason. Um, okay, I'm going to talk about number two. And number two is for me is Low.
No.
Now, I love this album. Um, I could just praise it, praise it, praise it. So you got these seven tracks on side A, and a lot of them are short. They're short and they're punchy and they're highly melodic. So you open with the instrumental Speed of Life with those those synthesizers, and you have this combination of the electronica krautrock of bands like Neu and Kraftwerk. You have that real German feel, but then it's so funky. This is some of the funkiest music that Bowie ever did. Um, it's different than Young Americans. Young Americans was soul, right? Soul and R&B. This is funk, which is a whole different thing. Breaking Glass, What in the World, Sound and Vision, Always Crashing in the Same Car, Be My Wife, A New Career in a New Town. I think those songs are just perfect. I love the way they're sequenced. And then you have some different people come in once in a while. Iggy Pop sings on um, What in the World, and Mary Hopkin sings on, I believe, Sound and Vision. And then you flip that vinyl over when I had it, and you get these four instrumentals, and they're great. Yeah. So some people feel like that was too much Eno and not enough Bowie, but I don't care because I love Eno. So what's wrong with a collaborative album?
And
Yeah, great little
so did
booklet
Bowie.
here. Hmm?
And so did Bowie. Bowie loved Eno too.
Uh, okay,
I mean,
okay.
this was his Another Green World.
Yeah, yeah, great little booklet here. I got the Virgin copy. I had the RCA, but I sold it, and because those RCAs, even they're collectible, so they were worth a lot of money, and they really don't sound that good. So I was like, okay, they don't sound very good. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to upgrade to these better sounding Virgin. Bowie was always picky about everything, but yeah, I think this combination of melody, krautrock, funk, I don't know, the whole thing is just irresistible to me. I love the lyrics on here. Um, and I talk about bass lines a lot. I'll talk about them on my songs list, but there's some killer bass and drums on here. Again, Alomar, Murray, Davis, I can't praise them enough. You bring these Philadelphia musicians into Switzerland. I think this was, no, France. This was recorded in France, mostly. and partly in Switzerland, I think. So you bring these Philadelphia guys over to Europe, and you make this Euro Philly hybrid. I find it irresistible. Number two, low.
Okay, my number two is the classic rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Um, it's a perfect five, but could it be made better? Yes, by taking It Ain't Easy out and putting Sweet Head in there. Sweet Head is a perfect Ziggy Stardust song, but the studio, Bowie did not have the power yet to get away with doing a song like this. And so, it got kind of nixed, but it was released later. If you get the Ryko disc version with the extra tracks, there are several tracks that fit perfectly with the album. Um, Velvet Goldmine, Sweet Head, Chuck Berry's Round and Round. But forget about all of that. The beginning of 5 years, pushing through the market square, and it just like Bowie sets the scene. This is a concept album. It's not a real heavy-handed concept album, but it is a concept album about 5 years before the end of the world when a uh, alien comes down to Earth and becomes a rock musician, and he becomes a messiah. And and Bowie was, definitely influenced by Tommy here, except Tommy wasn't, an alien. But the whole idea of having a messiah rock musician, and Bowie was confusing Ziggy with himself at the time because Bowie has had some interesting experiences with drugs, and he even said he had trouble separating himself from Ziggy. Bowie, who is like the ultimate, I he's a person who can be anything, but when he is something, it's very rarely really him. Okay. It's a mask that he wears because Bowie, by definition, he has said, is actually an introvert and he can't relate directly. So he has to do it by putting on these masks. And boy, was he ever putting on the masks at this time. You've got a, a last minute addition, Starman, which when Ken Scott said you need to have a a single, something that's really catchy as a single. And so Bowie thought about it. He said, well, what's the song I can think of that's catchiest? And it was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And just listen to it. Starman is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Okay. Done by Ziggy.
Hmm.
Uh, it follows the same basic tune. Then you get down to the last three songs, and there you've got Ziggy Stardust, which is a fantastic prog ballad, not prog, I'm sorry, art rock ballad, glam ballad. And then it goes into Suffragette City. And it's very hard for me to hear the end of Ziggy Stardust without the and it just, immediately
Right.
starts up with Suffragette City. And then his power ballad that ends the whole thing. And that is, the
Rock and
it's like
roll
he
suicide.
yeah,
Yeah.
rock and roll suicide. He began with 5 years and then he ends with rock and roll suicide, which is so powerful when he says, oh no, love, you're not alone. You're watching yourself, but it's too unfair. You got your head all tangled up, and if I could only make you care. And then give me your hand. And it was like that was made to perform live. One more thing I wanted to say about Ziggy Stardust. You mentioned Mick Ronson. If you listen to the demos that Bowie did for this album, the acoustic demos, they pale in comparison with the electric riffs that Ronson added to them. Ronson enhanced these songs so much. It would not have been the same album without Mick Ronson. It would not. It would have been a good album, but it wouldn't have been the brilliant album. So every time I hear Ziggy Stardust, I think about Mick Ronson.
Yeah.
And so that's my number two.
Yeah, and you made me think too about because I did not know that Starman was somewhere over the rainbow. Never thought of it before.
Really?
But I am aware of the influence of Somewhere Over the Rainbow on Lazarus. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
The bit about the bluebird,
Hmm.
but
Yes.
instead of a musical reference, it's a lyrical,
But
thematic reference. But so that's interesting that he would be influenced by that song from between 71 2 when he recorded Ziggy and all the way up through 2016.
but
So
just think
that's
about
in,
it. There's a starman somewhere
yeah,
over the
wow,
rainbow.
that's interesting. I can hear it. Just something I'd never read about or thought about. And yeah, I don't always pick up because I'm not a musician, so I don't always pick up on that. All right, number one, you everyone should figure out because it's the only one left. And I have a different album cover for this because I own the Ryko disc. This is Station to Station, and this is the much maligned um, this picture from The Man Who Fell to Earth that they changed the album cover, and then people got really upset because we need something to be upset about other than existential problems, right? So,
I like
uh,
that cover.
yeah, I do too. Um, but yeah, people they've restored it to the white one, and so down below, I'm holding this up, but down below the viewers will see the other album cover, which is better known. But yeah, the Ryko disc. Oddly enough, it doesn't have any bonus tracks on it though.
It
But
didn't have the live
absolutely
stuff
my
on it. The
um,
right, it didn't have Stay and the live from
oh, it does. Yeah, it does. You're right.
yeah,
I'm sorry because it doesn't say live in parentheses. It has Word on a Wing and Stay.
right.
And those are live tracks. Okay, so I do have bonus. And the thing about these Ryko discs is you can't stream these bonus songs on Spotify. Like you were talking about Sweethead, you can't find that anywhere on Spotify. But yeah, this is absolutely perfect album. Maybe a little biased because the first time I saw Bowie was this tour in February of '76, which we talk about on the first episode. But Station to Station, Golden Years, Word on a Wing, TVC 15, Stay, Wild as the Wind. 6 songs. Perfect. Perfect. And the playing on here, you got that core band that I talk about, but then you've got Roy Bittan from the E Street Band playing fabulous piano on here. He may play other keyboards, but it's the piano I think of most. And then Earl Slick on guitar. What a band. What a band. On the tour, they would replace Earl Slick with Stacy Hedden. Hayden, Hedden, however you want to say his name. But yeah, this to me is a perfect band. Absolutely perfect. Uh, Killer playing by everyone. Slick, one of the greatest guitarists ever to work with Bowie. Roy Bittan, you can't say enough about him. And then that core rhythm section. Station to Station has a little bit of harmonica on it, so I'm presuming Bowie plays the harmonica. And he doesn't play harmonica very often. He did on Black Tie White Noise, I think. Every once in a while, he'll pick up harmonica. I think it's because he was trying to shed the Bob Dylan comparisons. And when he did play harmonica, it was always different than Dylan. Station to Station doesn't sound anything like Bob Dylan's harmonica. Just a perfect band. Bowie is primarily a singer on here, and this is my number one. I'm not alone. There are other people who have Station to Station number one, but I think it's just that all the elements, the singing and the musicianship, is just top notch, and I just have so much fun listening to this. And you know what? Your point well made. I'll close with this. Yeah, it's got some darkness, it's got some Nietzsche influence and that kind of thing. But then you've got things like love me, love me, love me, love me, say you do, or say you will. And it's got this mix of darkness and lightness on it that I like. It gives it a nice lyrical tension. So that's my number one. I'm sticking to it.
Okay, my number one is, and it has been since it came out in 1980, Scary Monsters. Scary Monsters was for me, Bowie was just, I was loving Bowie as it, from throughout the 70s. And then Scary Monsters comes out. And I remember Cindy and I were working second shift at the time, so we got off at midnight. But I had the album, took it home, and I put it on. And it starts with this really chaotic "It's No Game" with Bowie just howling basically, and underneath or uh, back and forth with this girl angrily shouting the lyrics in Japanese. And it's like, what the hell? Um, and and Bowie was he was trying to make a point about a lot of the newer new wave artists who were talking about how rough their stuff was. And he said, "You want to hear rough? Here's rough." And then we've got, of course, Up the Hill Backwards with um, when he says, "I'm okay, you're so so." And I remember when we first heard that, we're playing it at night, and Cindy says, "I knew he was going to say, you're so so." Um, Gary Monsters, I love, I know that, you don't find it as incredible, but I do. Ashes to Ashes. This is returning to Major Tom. Okay. He's not dead yet. He's still floating around out there and he's a junkie. But Ashes to Ashes. Um, then Teenage Wildlife. Have you have you ever really listened back to back of Heroes and Teenage Wildlife? And you basically realize that Fripp is playing his solo from Heroes.
Mm,
Just listen to it again. That's
okay.
it's the song that is different, but the Fripp is the same. It's the same Fripp on Teenage Wildlife, and this is Bowie's wry observation on the new age um,
Or new
artists
wave.
that were influenced, new wave, sorry, new wave artists that were influenced by him, and then Scream Like a Baby, which is sort of a uh it's like Panic in Detroit done again. It's that kind of dystopian wild thing. Scream Like a Baby, Sam Was a Gun. Kingdom Come, a Tom Verlaine song. uh Because You're Young has Pete Townsend playing on it. And then he did a couple extra songs, and one of them was a redo of Panic in Detroit, which fits perfectly because of the the what's going on with the album. You have Scream Like a Baby and Panic in Detroit, and then Space Oddity. He redid Space Oddity, a beautiful, beautiful version of it that was it's like in some ways I prefer it to the original Space Oddity, but that could be simply because I've heard Space Oddity so many million times, a slightly different version of it. But he sings it really well and he plays it really well. And it just kind of fits in because of Ashes to Ashes. And those are bonus tracks. So Scary Monsters is my number one David Bowie album.
Great choice. And of course, you've got It's No Game Reprise Part Two.
Yes, that's right, where he sings it more gently.
Yeah, more subdued. And isn't that interesting the way they bookend that album? It's just so. Oh, I never thought of this before, but you talked a few times about his Neil Young influence. Neil Young always would do a part one, part two bookending his albums.
That's
Night's the
true.
Night, and later Rust Never Sleeps. I never thought about that. In fact, Rust Never Sleeps came out the year before. Huh. Yeah. I wonder if he borrowed that idea from Young. I never thought of that before. Huh. So maybe the song Because You're Young is about Neil Young. Just kidding. Um, Great list. Well, I think it's time for us to wrap up the video. So, for those of you who are still hanging on, we really appreciate it. We'd love to read your comments. Engage as best as you can. Write a comment, hit the like button. If you want to go a step further, I have a Patreon page. I'll put that in the link below. And we'll put our top 15 at the end of this video here. And thank you for joining us. And as we say here in Bonita, Mexico, buen dia. And as you say
I
in Phoenix, Arizona, what do you say?
would say a reservoir.
A reservoir. Yeah, we need water. Okay, thanks everybody.
Bye bye.